Republicans face the possibility of a brutal midterm loss. Donald Trump is once again floating voter fraud conspiracy theories as an excuse to interfere in U.S. elections. Earlier today, he took to Truth Social saying he will not sign any other bills until the controversial Save America Act, which could block millions of Americans from voting, is passed. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer responded to Trump's threat on X, writing, quote, "If Trump is saying he won't sign any bills until the SAVE Act is passed, then so be it. There will be total gridlock in the Senate. Senate Democrats will not help the SAVE Act under any circumstances." This comes as Republicans target swing states like Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina. They're alleging voter fraud and pushing for more control over the voting process. It should be noted that all four of those states have crucial Senate elections this year, which could determine which party controls the Senate. And Trump has been giving his fellow Republicans the go-ahead to try to take over elections. Listen to this.
The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
What exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections? And which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest. And if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it.
Joining us now to discuss is James Sample, professor of law at Hofstra University and author of the Who Decides Substack. James, you put out a new piece today called The Imperial Presidency. And in addition to discussing tariffs, the tariff case, and the war with Iran, you talked a little bit about how this could define the constitutional settlement of this era, in your words. What does that mean?
What it means is that there are a range of issues where President Trump and the administration is basically bypassing entirely. It's not just that Congress is supine, which pretty much everyone agrees that it is. It's that there is an affirmative attempt to circumvent the separation of powers, to circumvent the idea of it's difficult to get legislation through two houses of Congress. The founders set up a very clear system. It's Sesame Street civics, bicameralism, presentment. The fact that you cannot get legislation through Congress, the SAVE Act, for example, does not empower the executive to then do it unilaterally under the guise of emergency powers. So whether it's tariffs or spending or sanctions against universities or acts of wartime hostilities, putting Congress completely to the side, then not listening to the courts. Think about the immigration context. The courts are being aggressively ignored, defied by the administration. We have conservative judges going and writing opinions saying that they are seeing more court orders openly defied by federal agencies this year than they've seen in their entire career. So what I mean by the imperial presidency, and it certainly applies to the specter of nationalizing elections, is that we have systems in place. And one of the most basic fundamental tenets of democracy is that no presidency, no Congress is forever. If you tear apart the scaffolding that makes American democracy, it will be torn apart for the next president, too.
Can we just go back to the here and now of the bill? Because this is going nowhere in the Senate. They only have 53 Republicans. He's got to get to 60 votes. So are you concerned if Trump decides to do this through, say, an executive order? But he wouldn't be able to do that, would he? He
definitely wouldn't be able to do it, but that doesn't mean he won't try. And I think that we are perhaps being a little Pollyannish if we assume, and I'm with you, and I certainly hope you're right, that the SAVE Act is dead in the Senate because there are only 53-ish votes. The Republican holdouts are essentially holdouts at bypassing the filibuster or doing away with the filibuster, doing away with cloture, and having a talking filibuster, a so-called speaking filibuster, including John Cornyn, who's taken that position. The idea there is that, and the filibuster, the Senate is a kind of anti-democratic, and I mean that in a small d sense, institution to begin with, by design. The Senate represents a lot more land than people. Wyoming gets the same representation as California. But if you add on to that the filibuster as an extra anti-democratic layer, which it absolutely is, you need 60 votes in an already non-representative body to get something through. It is very, very difficult. People think of the United States democracy as about majoritarian. It is a super majoritarian majority that is required to get most legislation through. Depending on the continuation of the filibuster, in order to prevent the SAVE Act from going forward, that's a precarious position to be in, especially if you have concerns about the filibuster as a general matter.
In your piece, you also write about this war in Iran. And I want to thread the needle between these two things a little bit as Americans try to make sense of what's happening domestically and concerns rising as we head toward the midterms, as they also fear for what could happen if this war is drawn out. One of the things that we hear from experts is the possibility of domestic threats here in the United States because of what we are doing in Iran and around the world. Is there a possibility here, I guess I'll pose a hypothetical to you, of these things converging? A kind of retaliatory terror attack happening here on U.S. soil, and the president having the opportunity to do something that we know he is interested in doing, which is declaring an emergency that allows him to make changes to the upcoming elections.
It's a concern, and Antonia sent me a remarkable piece that I recommend to everyone by Tim Snyder, also on Substack earlier today. It is absolutely concerning that he will try to do so, but let's be clear. There is an emergency powers statute in place, the National Emergencies Act. But what a statutory grant of emergency power grants is power that is specific and curtailed. It is curtailed and tailored to the situations that Congress has anticipated and the specific powers that Congress has delegated. There is, and let's be absolutely clear about this, there is no delegation of constitutional power to the President of the United States to do anything vis-a-vis elections. The states have that power, and Congress has that power. And let's just put a fine historical point on this. November 8th, 1864. That's the date of a presidential election in which Abraham Lincoln ran for re-election in the midst of the Civil War. He thought it was that important, and it was a closely contested race for a time because of Northern Democratic opposition to emancipation at that time. It was not guaranteed that he would win. Lincoln had the courage to hold a presidential election in the middle of the Civil War. Donald Trump is threatening to take over elections because of a midterm election that he thinks will go badly for him based on the false pretenses of invented or perhaps created crises.
James Sample, thank you so much for being with us tonight.